We have a lot of books to talk about today. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. My name is Dani and today I want to try to do a wrap-up of the past 3 months. The last wrap-up I did was the books I read in July, so August, September, and October there were no wrap-ups. And I still want to talk about these books. There are some that I really loved, there are some that I hated, and I just want to talk about them. So I'm glad to have you here. And let's start because this is probably going to be very long. So I'm going to talk about them in the order that I read, literally order that I finished each book in each month, because I think that's going to make it easier for me to try to remember. There's some of these that I honestly don't remember so much, they were not as memorable, and I just don't remember what I thought about them, but we'll try. So the first book that I finished in August was probably the reason why I didn't read too much in August, because it was maybe my most hated book of the year, or my least favorite book of the year. And that was Central Park by Guillaume Musso. This is an adult thriller. Can you see the cover? This is an adult thriller about a couple who wakes up in Central Park and they are handcuffed together and they don't remember how they got there. The girl was in Paris the night before and the guy was in Dublin, if I'm not wrong. And from there we start to follow them as they try to figure out what happened. The reason why I hated this book so much was that it was completely not believable at all. This felt like watching a Fast and Furious movie, but not in the good way. There are car chases in here, and they I think if I remember correctly, they actually drive up some stairs in a car. Or maybe I just made that up, because that's kind of the thing that happens in this book. It's just very action-packed, but in a bunch of senseless action scenes that don't make any sense. It was funny. I read the whole thing in like 2 days. So it kept me gripped, but I think I gave it 1.5 stars because I was just confused the whole time, like why they were doing all this stuff and what was happening, and I don't know. I thought it was going to be a more serious, normal story. Maybe if I went into the book with the expectation of it being completely over the top and just action with no purpose for the action. And I'm going to say a spoiler here because I need it, because it was the worst part of the book. I don't know, it was the thing that made the least sense on the book for me. So I'm going to put a tag here, skip to when you don't see the word spoilers in the screen anymore. This couple, they've never seen each other, and in the end they get together because that made more sense for the author. I don't know. When they get together in the end, I'm like, why? What is happening? It was really bad. It was really, really bad. The next book I read, and which month are we starting with? August. The next book I read in August was The Effort by Claire Holroyde. This is an adult sci-fi about this group of people who get together to try to prevent a meteor from crashing into Earth. And the interesting part about this book is that we're following this group of people. They're from everywhere in the world, but we're also seeing the repercussions of the panic, the worldwide panic of a meteor coming to Earth. And it's a lot. I feel like this, on the opposite side of the previous one, this was a completely believable story of the type of panic and the type of actions that human beings would take in this kind of situation, in which they basically believe the world is ending. So we of course have one portion of population that is hopeful and trying to do better because of that, but mostly humans are just animals, and it's really interesting to see that both of those parts, but it's really sad. It's really, really sad to see what happens to some of the good people here in the story. So that was kind of my favorite part, but it was really sad. And then on the other side of the story, we have this group of people who are trying to figure out how to prevent the meteor from falling. It kind of says in the synopsis that they're trying to decide if humans are worth saving, but I didn't get that sense from the story. They are really working towards that goal of saving humanity, while everything else descends into chaos. One thing that I really enjoyed about this book is that it has a Brazilian character. He is actually an indigenous character from a Brazilian tribe, and that was really cool to see because we never see that in any book not written in Portuguese. So it was really cool to follow that character as well and to see how much effort and how much research she put into that character. It was one of the best representations of Brazilians that I saw. Of course, I cannot say about the indigenous part of it, but just the parts that talk about Brazil, it was really nicely done. So I do recommend this. I don't know if I haven't heard anyone talking about this, but I thought it was really, really good. I don't remember my ratings anymore. Should I say my ratings? Do you like knowing the ratings? I feel like when I say the rating that I gave to a book, everything that I said about the book itself is discarded and like just the number is what's important, but I'll say it anyway if you'd like to know it. So yeah, Central Park was 1.5 stars and The Effort was 3.5 stars. It is my own type of rating that I try to give to different things of the book, different characteristics, and I end up with a 5-scale rating that has 0.5s in it. So it's 3.5, which is good. Anything above 3 is good for my ratings. The next and the last book I read in August, I read 3 books in August. It was not a great reading month, especially because I didn't like, the first one was the worst book that I read in the year, and I really didn't enjoy this one as much as I expected because it was the hype of last year. And that is The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. This was very kindly gifted to me by Kelsey from Reading with Kelsey. I thank you so much for giving it to me. I feel really bad that I didn't like it, but I really, really appreciate the gift. And I really was dying to read this book. Everyone was loving this book so much, but it just did not work for me. And I've read a lot of Matt Haig. I've given him 5 stars before, and I feel like this book just missed the mark in a lot of parts. This tells a story about a woman. What's her name? Nora. She commits suicide right in the beginning of the book, and she ends up in this library, Midnight Library, where she can pick different books and live different versions of her life if she had made different choices throughout her life. So the whole book is her picking different choices, picking different regrets, and seeing what would have happened in her life if things were different, if she had done something different. And I think that concept is really good, but it's hard to even explain what my issue with this book was, but I feel like he was trying to convey a message so hard here about depression that it was all about that in the book, and the actual plot, the actual story did not make sense for me. I did not buy what was happening, and I feel like it was very heavy-handed. The librarian who helps Nora when she was picking books is very in your face with everything that she's trying to teach you. And I don't know, I feel like this book could be very good for a lot of people if read at the right time. But for me, reading at a time when I was just looking for entertainment, I just did not buy a lot of what was happening here. I really love Matt Haig's discussion about anxiety, depression, and all of that. And I think he does a very good job in nonfiction with that. But when he tried to put that in fiction in this book, I felt like it was too heavy-handed, and I just did not like it. There were some of the lives that I think just didn't make sense, and one thing that I didn't really like about this book is that, I don't know if this is a spoiler. I'll put a spoiler tag. I don't think it is a spoiler, but if you don't want to know anything about it, then skip this part. But one thing that I didn't like is that when she goes to this new life that she's seeing what would be different, she's kind of taking the place of the version of herself that was there, and she doesn't know anything about the past. So like, she is just starting from that point. So in one of her lives, she is now an important athlete and she's giving a speech, and she's put in that point exactly when she was about to give the speech, but she doesn't know what the speech is because she did not live that life. So she just appeared at that point. And I didn't like that. I don't think that makes sense. Because if she did make a different choice in her life, she would know the whole past until that point. And just dropping her in that situation, like, okay, now you're this person, figure it out without knowing anything about the past, anything about what this person has done in the past. It's like she's robbing a lot of the other people around that different Nora of the relationship that they had with that Nora, because she's stealing that Nora's life. I'm getting very passionate about this. I just did not think that makes sense. And it was kind of mean of her to steal that other Nora's life. And she does mention that a little bit in the book, but it's more in the sense that, like, if she's living a different version of her life, she would have known what happened in the past until that point of that life. This probably doesn't make sense unless you've read the book. But yeah, so I didn't like that. But the worst part of this book for me is that he, at some point here, this is getting very much longer than I expected. The worst part of this for me was that in one point here, she goes to Brazil and she's talking to this Brazilian guy, and she's like, oh, how do we say asshole in Portuguese? And he says a word that I have never heard before. Later, after researching a little bit, I found out that that's actually a word people use in Portugal. It's a different type of Portuguese, especially for slang, especially for like curse words. We don't speak the same. So I was very, very disappointed on Matt Haig, because he has a huge following. He has so many Brazilian people who follow him. He could have just asked on Twitter for, like, how do you say asshole in Brazilian Portuguese? And he would have gotten a lot of options, none of which would be the one they use in this book. So I was very disappointed about that. Did not like it. That ruined the rest of the book for me because I was just disappointed. So yeah, ended up being 3 stars. Now that I'm saying all this stuff, I feel like it should be lower. But let's move on. Those are the books that I read in August, so let's go to September now. It's getting really hot here. I got very excited about this book. I'll try to be quicker now with my reviews. In September, I read Fullmetal Alchemist Volume 13. If you don't know, this series is about 2 brothers, Alphonse and Eric. They are alchemists, and they did something really bad when they were children. Now they're trying to fix that. This is Volume 14. There's not a lot I can say, but I love this. This is a manga series, and I love this so much. It's one of my favorite series, some of my favorite characters of all time, and I definitely recommend it, especially if you're looking for a manga series to start. Really great, 5 stars. Then I picked Preludes and Nocturnes, the first one in the Sandman graphic novel series by Neil Gaiman, and I gave this one 3 stars. It was the second time reading this. I liked it more than the first time I read it, but I still feel like this graphic novel series, and just like comics in general, are not for me. I just feel very confused, very like not knowing what's happening. I read this because it's going to be a TV show, and I think I'm going to enjoy the TV show much more than the graphic novel or comics. I don't remember if it's supposed to be a comic or graphic novel. Either way, this is a DC universe, so like they're characters from the DC universe in here that I don't know, that I really don't know the background of. I just felt very confused throughout the whole thing. I started the second one and I DNF'd it, and I'm not going to continue this series. I'm curious to watch the show, but I'm not going to continue with this one. Then I read The Maidens by Alex Michaelides. This is an adult thriller about this woman who goes to Cambridge University to figure out who killed this girl. And she believes for sure that it is this professor in the school, and she's trying to basically prove that. I had heard a lot of really bad things about this book, but I loved it. I gave it 4.5 stars, and I loved it more than the first book by this author that I read. And I just thought it was very entertaining. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of things were unexpected. I do agree that the Maidens themselves are not very important, and there's this thing about secret society in this book that could be more important. It could have been talked about more because it would be more exciting. But we're just following this woman and her niece, I think. Yes. In trying to figure out what happened in that murder, what's really happened in those girls that they're called the Maidens that follow this professor, while the professor himself is very mysterious and you don't really know what's happening with him. I really enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun, and I don't think it was one of the most perfectly crafted thrillers, but it was still a lot of fun and entertaining. Then I read an ebook, an arc that I had that's called Reclaim by Madeleine Roux. This is a YA sci-fi about this world, futuristic world, in which there's this experiment that promises to help erase memories from people, memories that they want to forget. So this group of people, I think 3 or 4, I don't remember. This is one of the books that I don't remember much about, but I still enjoyed the ride while reading it. So this group of people, there's this girl, the main character, then the boy, and an older woman. Not an older, like she's old. She's just older than the teenagers. But they have these memories that they want to erase, and very creepy, weird stuff starts happening. And that I think it's like a different planet, a different moon or something like that. And it's a lot of fun. It becomes quickly a thriller, and they're trying to save their lives, basically. And I did have a lot of fun. I gave it 4 stars, and it was just very entertaining, like I said with the previous one, but just a sci-fi thriller that I think more people should be reading because it was very unique. I think it was just a very uniquely told story, and one that I would definitely recommend if you like sci-fi thrillers. From what I remember, and just reading my Goodreads review, there were way too many twists and reveals in the end, but I still enjoyed it a lot, and I would definitely recommend it. And the last book I read in September before we go into October was All These Bodies by Kendare Blake. This is a YA mystery, horror, thriller kind of story. Happens in the 50s, and it's told in the perspective of this boy who is the son of the sheriff, the local sheriff. And this crime happens in their town in which the whole family is found dead with their blood drained from their bodies, and there's this girl covered in blood. But there's no blood like around the scene, it's just blood on her, and the bodies don't have any blood. So it's a very weird situation, and people don't know like how that could happen. And it is a crime that has been happening around that region for a while now, with different people, of course. And they put this girl in jail, and she says that she's going to tell everything, but only to the boy, to the one narrator of the story. I really love the way that this story is told, because it doesn't give you all the answers that you're looking for. It keeps you in the mystery, but at the same time, like, she really believes that it happened in one way, but it's never really explained. So I enjoyed it a lot. I would definitely recommend if you like YA horrors that are more ambiguous and not very explained. I would definitely recommend it. It's a very slow moving story that's almost everything about the boy talking to this girl and how things happened and their relationship. I gave this 4 stars, and I would for sure recommend it. Now let's go to October. Okay, in October I read 5 books. Yes, 5 books. So the first one was Not Here to Be Liked by Quach. This was an arc sent to me by HarperCollins. Thank you so much for sending this. This is a YA contemporary, which I don't usually read. And it is a story about Eliza, who wants to be editor-in-chief of her school paper, but they actually pick Len, who is this jock kind of character, and he's very inexperienced, but he's more liked than her. And because she's an unlikable person, people don't want her to be the chief. But then they have to spend time together, and they have to figure out how to run this paper when she has most experience of all, and he is actually leading everything. And of course, there's a romance aspect in here. I gave this 3.5 stars, and I enjoyed it a lot. I enjoyed the main characters a lot and their journey, their development, but I felt like the side characters and even the adults in the story are not really developed very much. They don't learn anything throughout the story, and there are quite a few comments here that were not challenged by these people. And I don't know, it has a lot of discussion on misogyny, patriarchy, and all of that stuff, and I think that it could have been better handled with the side characters, because it was very focused on these 2 characters, and it was still a cool, fun story with them, but I did not love it. But I did enjoy it a lot, and I haven't read enough YA contemporaries to compare too much, but it was a fun book. In October, I also read The Other People by CJ Tudor. I gave this one 4 stars, and this is an adult thriller that starts with this man. We follow quite a few different characters here, but the main plot of the story is this man who is going home one day late, and he sees his daughter in the car in front of him, and he doesn't understand what's happening, why she's there. But he's late, he has to be home, otherwise his wife is going to be very mad at him. But he saw his daughter there, so he stops at a rest stop and he calls his wife, he calls home to ask what was happening, why his daughter was in this car. And a detective answers the phone saying that both his wife and his daughter were murdered. And they're like, the detective is there, she's there with the bodies of his wife and his daughter. So something very, very weird is happening there, and we go following that from there. I'm not gonna say more. I feel like the synopsis here gives a lot of the reviews that would have been more interesting to know in the book, because they're just reviewed like quite like after the halfway point of the book. So I think that's all you would need to know. This is the third book that I read from CJ Tudor, and I enjoyed all three. I didn't love, they weren't some of my favorite thrillers, but I enjoyed all of them. The only one that I have to read still is The Burning Girls. I think that's it. And I'll definitely pick it up because I really enjoy her writing. I enjoy how she tells those stories, and I'm always gripped until the end, wanting to know what happened. There are a lot of things in this book that are over the top and too convenient at times, but not in a bad way. It's just in a fun way that makes the story more interesting as you're reading. I don't think it went too over the top that would be too unbelievable, like Central Park, but it was just a very fun story that I couldn't guess a lot of it. We only have 3 more to go. The next book I finished in October was To Sleep in a Sea of Stars by Christopher Paolini. This was very kindly gifted to me by Clementine from Books with Clementine. I'm going to leave her Instagram in the description. I appreciate so much the gift, but again, it was a second gift in this wrap-up that I really didn't like the book as much as I expected. I promise, all the books on my wish list are there for a reason, because I'm really hoping to love them. This was a 5-star prediction. The Midnight Library was a 5-star prediction, and it makes me really sad that I did not enjoy them as much as I thought I would, especially as they're gifts. I hope that doesn't sound too bad. Like I said, I really appreciate the gift. I will cherish the books forever, but I just didn't like the story. That's unfortunate. But this, first of all, is very heavy, so I'm going to put it down for a little bit. But this is an adult sci-fi about this woman who is on another planet, and she's a microbiologist. Maybe she's researching other lives in other planets, trying to find other lives in other planets. And she does find this alien creature thing that basically takes over her body in a venom-like style. And she goes from there as half alien throughout the story. This happens not right in the beginning of the book, but it's a book long enough that I don't think that's a spoiler. Then the main thing of this book is that they're trying to now deal with this, like, it's a first contact story, so they're trying to deal with this knowledge of aliens and their aliens attacking, and she ends up in this spaceship with a crew of misfits, and there's a pig and a cat, which I loved, but other than that, I just felt like the book was really boring. We hear everything from her perspective, like 900 pages of her perspective in a very linear way, which made the pacing feel really slow and boring to me. And I just didn't care enough about these characters, about this world, these aliens, any of this. Everything was very convenient and easy, and just like, you're fighting aliens in space, and it was too easy, like, the whole time. I wasn't worried about any of the characters for most of the time, or just didn't care if they died. It felt like there were no high stakes really in the story. And even with the side characters, like, there's some really cool characters, but they weren't explored as much because we see everything from her perspective. So sometimes she would just like stop everything and sit with the specific character to talk to them, so that character would be developed and we would know a little bit of their backstory. I didn't like it so much. I didn't like the way that it was written, because it was everything in her perspective, and I just didn't like the plot enough to continue with the series. I'm going to wait after it is released to see what people were talking about. If everyone who loved this book loves the second one in the same way, I'm not gonna pick it up because I didn't love this one. But if it is different enough, if there are more stakes, if there's more plot happen, and if we get a different perspective there to not follow the same person for 900 pages in a very linear situation, I might pick it up. But for now, I don't think I would pick up another book this long, not having enjoyed the first one. Only 2 to go, and they were some of my favorite books of the year. So that's a great way to end this. Skyward by Sanderson. I've talked about this a few times, I feel like, before in other videos, but this is a story about a girl called Spencer. It is a YA sci-fi, and she wants to be a pilot. She lives in this other world, and she wants to be a pilot like her father, but her father was branded a coward when she was little, and he died, and now people don't want her to be a pilot as well because they think that she might have the same issue as him and she might be a coward the same way as he was. So we're following Spencer as she trains to be a pilot and all these other characters that I love so much. This book is very brutal. This one has a lot of high stakes. People die. Sanderson is not afraid of making you sad and killing nice people. I really love the way that this story is told, in which she's learning a lot of the skills and a lot of the things at the same time as we are learning, because that makes it so I don't feel left out of what she's doing and what she's learning. I loved how much he opened this world until the end of the book in a way that makes us have so many questions, and I can't wait to continue the series because I want to see all these answers and I trust that it's going to be amazing. I definitely recommend this if you like YA sci-fi. It is 5 stars completely, and I already started the next one. So do subscribe if you want to see my wrap-up next month to see how I felt about Star Sign. And the last book in this wrap-up is, what is this? Good Girl Bad Blood by Holly Jackson. This is the second one in the Good Girl's Guide to Murder trilogy. It is a YA thriller trilogy about this girl. The first one is about the girl called Pip. She's investigating a murder that happened in her town a few years ago because everyone thinks that the girl's boyfriend killed her and then he committed suicide, but she doesn't think that that's what really happened, so she's investigating. And it is one of my favorite YA thrillers of all time. I really love the way the story is told with a lot of documents, and there's a lot of images and maps and things as she's exploring everything. But her relationship with the other characters and the way that she grows in these 2 books is really impressive. So in this one, she's investigating a different type of crime, and we still see a lot of what the repercussions, you know what I'm trying to say, of what happened in the first book that's still being resolved here. And again, I really love how much she grows and how much she develops in these 2 books, and I can't wait to read the last one. This was a long wrap-up. I'm glad I don't read this many books in a month, like some other people, because I would not be able to do this long of a wrap-up every time. If you're still here with me, please leave a star emoji in the comments because I would be very curious to know who has actually watched this whole thing. I should have probably broken up this video in a few parts. Anyway, I really do hope you enjoyed this. Remember to like and subscribe, and thank you so much for joining me. Bye!